It's crazy to think that it's already the month of June. Half the year is nearly gone already, and E3 was supposed to be next week. Time is absolutely flying. It's been such a bummer that we've missed out on all the hype and anticipation that usually builds during the weeks leading up to E3. Like, Nintendo always has something big to show off, and typically we don't always know what it's going to be, like last year how they showed off Breath of the Wild 2. This year we just won't really have that, because E3, unfortunately with everything happening in the world, got canceled for this year. Nintendo's also pushed back their digital event to some undisclosed date that we're not really sure about when it's going to happen. But thankfully, it still seems like the Switch is going to have a fairly busy month, and if somehow none of the games from last month pique your fancy, we're hoping that some of these from this month will. I'm Zian from Nintendo Life, and today we're here to share with you a dozen games and a few DLC packs releasing on the Nintendo Switch in the month of June that we think are pretty exciting. We think there's something to look forward to. And before we get on with the list, I just want to thank you all for being so patient with us as well. Normally we get this highlight video done at the beginning of the month, right at the start. But unfortunately, last month on a certain particular day called May 29th, the world decided that it's just going to be a great day to release Switch games, and a bunch of high-profile Switch games came out, giving Alex and I a ton of video reviews to work on. So without further ado, let's check out the list. Starting out our list on the 2nd of June, which has already happened by the time you see this video, is a gritty, narrative-driven 2D action game by the name of Liberated. This game takes place entirely inside the pages of a comic book, much like the game Comix Zone from back in the day on the Genesis, but much darker, and I don't think any aliens are going to be running about in this game. I really do appreciate how seamless the transitions between the cutscenes and gameplay are, though. When I first checked it out, I didn't even notice the comic panel border that was surrounding the gameplay, the trailer that I was watching. And we've actually already gone ahead and reviewed this title and gave it a whopping 8 out of 10. And so if you'd like to check out the full review, you can find that over at nintendolife.com. And we'll also probably pop a link in the description down below as long as I remember. And then launching on the 5th, which also probably has already happened by now, is a game that from the outside sort of looks like one of those shovelware titles everyone used to own a couple of on the Wii, but surprisingly, it's a pretty good game. We're of course talking about Clubhouse Games' 51 Worldwide Classics. This jumbo minigame compilation packs in a wide mix of 51 games ranging from miniaturized versions of golf and baseball to card and board games like Mancala and even a Nintendo favorite, Hanafuda. Our guys Chris Scullion and Alex Only have already put together a fancy video review on this game, so if you'd like to go check that out, we'll have a link in the description down below. And if you're worried about trying to find someone to play with, many of these games have offline and online multiplayer modes, so regardless of your situation, you shouldn't have any trouble finding someone to play with. It's the year 2049, and Nintendo has just released their latest system, the Nintendo Slip. Now, unfortunately, the only game that I have for it at the moment is Donkey Kong Country: The Legend of the Crystal Coconut, the game. And also, to top it off, Nintendo Switch servers are down, and I can't find anyone to play Clubhouse Games' 51 Worldwide Classics with.
I just want to play mini shogi!
Also launching on the 5th is the port of a well-loved title from the team at Obsidian, The Outer Worlds. Taking place in a sci-fi fantasy universe, this first-person RPG lets you create your own character and then carve out your own path in the world. Every decision you make, regardless of if you think it's a good or bad decision, will have some sort of consequence. As for the story and world, it seems to be a mashup almost of Borderlands and Fallout, but as I've still yet to ever play the game, that's just from what I can tell from the outside. The Outer Worlds was highly regarded when it launched on other platforms, and we've actually already gone ahead and reviewed The Outer Worlds on Switch, so by the time you catch this video, there might be a video review up of that. Otherwise, you can go over to nintendolife.com and check out the review there as well. And then if we jump ahead nearly a week to the 11th, we'll finally be able to get our hands on the new first-person shooter, Project Warlock. What started out originally as a Wolfenstein 3D clone over time evolved into what you see now, a crazy, fast-paced FPS with an extremely pixelated, unique art style that features tons of crazy, gory monsters and demons to hunt with your Warlock powers and unique weapons you can pick up along the journey. The main protagonist also seems to have little quips he'll say as you're slaying monsters, which sort of reminds me of Duke Nukem. If you're a fan of classic fast-paced shooters, this one looks like something to keep on your radar. Setting sail on the 16th is a brand new adventure called Summer in Mara. You play as a girl named Koa, whose island appears to be getting attacked by pirates, which sends her off on a journey to explore the many islands and the ocean that surrounds them. Exploration is at the heart of the game, but there's also a bit of farming sprinkled in as you can tend to your own island and build it up as you see fit. So it seems to have a mix of Harvest Moon, Story of Seasons, or Animal Crossing vibes going on. There's also a wide cast of characters for you to befriend as well. So I don't think I'm alone in saying that the ocean segments and the boat sailing seems to give out some serious Wind Waker vibes as well. So I'm curious to learn how much of this world you'll actually be able to explore. In the trailer that I watched, it looks like you can actually dive into the ocean and explore underwater too. So I'm curious if that's going to be segmented into certain sections, but I guess we'll just have to wait and find out. And thankfully, we won't have to wait long. Also dropping in on the 16th is a new DLC pack for a game that's not quite as bright as our last pick, but many will still probably be excited about it anyways. We're talking about the Silent Hill DLC pack for Dead by Daylight. The team-based survival horror game is bringing over Cheryl, or Heather Mason, from Silent Hill 3 as a playable survivor, and Pyramid Head will actually be a playable killer. Which surprisingly isn't the first time that Pyramid Head is playable in a game, as you could actually play as him in a new international track and field for the Nintendo DS, because Konami. This new DLC pack also includes a new Silent Hill themed map and a rendition of the Dead by Daylight theme by veteran Silent Hill composer Akira Yamaoka. The little I have played of Dead by Daylight had me nearly screaming on the couch out of sheer terror of being hunted. And honestly, this new Silent Hill DLC might make me jump back in. Finally, we have a solid release date for the first part of the Pokémon Sword and Shield expansion pass. The Isle of Armor will be available to play on the 17th of this month. It feels like this DLC was announced a lifetime ago, and I guess at this point it kind of was, but we're glad the first part is nearly here. The Isle of Armor is bringing a batch of returning Pokemon, a new legendary, new Galarian versions of particular Pokemon like this Galarian Slowbro who now wields an arm cannon. And of course, there's also a giant island to explore. You should also be aware that this is not a standalone DLC pack. You do need either Pokemon Sword or Shield to play it, and depending on which game you have, the story seems to be slightly different, as different characters will appear in the game. Charging straight into the side of the Switch on the 19th is the remaster of the classic racing title, Burnout Paradise Remastered. But if you know anything about Burnout, you know it's more in line with a crash simulator than a racing game. Burnout Paradise Remastered gives you a huge open world to drive around with over 130 vehicles to choose from, and includes every piece of DLC ever released for the game. Honestly, this sounds like a great package, but we really just wish the series would get a brand spanking new title, as Burnout Paradise originally released all the way back in 2008. But beggars can't be choosers, I suppose. The Burnout series hasn't graced Nintendo consoles since the DS, and let's just say this is a major step up over that iteration. If you've always considered jumping in the seat and finding out why people love this series so much, this remaster just might be the ticket for you. Knocking on the Switch's door on the 23rd is none other than everyone's favorite Sponge in his latest title, SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated, a from-the-ground-up remake of the classic GameCube-era 3D platformer. And this may surprise some, but it has quite the cult following.
With its epic boss battles and levels that feel like they were ripped straight from the show, this title felt different than a lot of the other TV show cash grabs from its time. There's a lot of hype riding on this title from fans, and while it may not necessarily live up to the likes of something like Super Mario Odyssey, in this day and age we can definitely use a few more solid 3D platformers, so we've got our hopes up. Show us what you got, SpongeBob. And then finally, after a few delays and betas, Ninjala is releasing on Switch on the 24th of June. Now, we won't spend too much time rehashing old details, but Ninjala is a free-to-play weapons-based battle royale with a very obvious coat of Splatoon paint slapped on top. The game looks extremely promising though, with its lovable cast of characters and its unique weapon types that are all made from mysterious ninja gum. I bet it makes sense in the game. If you've been growing tired of Fortnite or Splatoon, this may be worth giving a go. Then the 25th marks the return of the legendary tactical RPG Brigandine: The Legend of Runersia. The original Brigandine first released all the way back on the original PlayStation, and hasn't received another entry until now. The gameplay looks like it will mostly take place on these hexagonal battlefields, and instead of fighting with armies of soldiers like in Fire Emblem, you actually summon monsters to fight alongside your commander. The story also seems extremely in-depth, as at the start of the game you actually get to pick one of 6 factions warring for control of the land, which also warrants extra playthroughs to see the story fully through. The original Brigandine was highly regarded, and the team working on this new entry is comprised of members of the original Final Fantasy and Disgaea development teams. So even though they have some pretty large shoes to fill, their work so far looks extremely promising, and if you're curious to give it a shot, there's actually a demo available on the eShop that you can download right now.
So you're telling me that I only get 30 seconds to talk about the new Mr. Driller DrillLand game that's coming to the Switch on June 25th? I thought people loved Mr. Driller. Don't you know who Mr. Driller is?
Okay, so Mr. Driller is a fairly straightforward puzzler where you play as this little guy named Mr. Driller, and you just dig into the planet as far as you can while not trying to get crushed by falling blocks and to make sure you have enough oxygen. The game is also sort of a spiritual successor to Dig Dug, as the main character's dad is actually the guy from Dig Dug. And this game is also a remake of a GameCube title that never actually made its way to the West, so as a Mr. Driller fan, I'm extremely excited to try this out, and if you like puzzlers, you should definitely give this a shot because it's a great series and I love it. Please support it. Also launching on the Switch on the 25th is an extremely unique narrative-driven puzzler, The Almost Gone. As picturesque and peaceful as this game looks, its story surprisingly revolves around death, loss, and mental health. You're tasked with looking into every nook and cranny of the little puzzle box dioramas to uncover the answers to what led to your eventual demise. This game looks like it's going to have a story as deep as things like Gone Home, or if you're a fan of the Professor Layton games and are okay with something a little on the darker and more serious side, this might be for you. And last but not least is the latest title in the JRPG series, The Legend of Heroes: Trails of Cold Steel 3. In this turn-based RPG, you play as Rian Schwarzer, a soldier who's gone on to become an instructor at the school he originally enrolled at, and now has an entire class of students under his wing to train for battle, which sounds oddly similar to Fire Emblem Three Houses, doesn't it? Being this is the third entry in the series, it's interesting to not see the first and second games on the Switch, as from what I've been reading online, a lot of people are saying it's critical to play the first 2 games before jumping into the third. However, the developers have thought ahead and included a full library of character backstory and information for you to reference whenever you need right within the game. There's also a free demo available on the eShop, so if you still feel like this might be your cup of tea, then you can give it a shot before you fully commit.
And there you have it, a dozen games and a few DLC packs that are releasing on the Nintendo Switch in the month of June. Feel free to let us know in the comments down below if you're looking forward to getting your hands on any of the games that we talked about in this list. And also, be sure to let us know if you think that there were any games that deserve to be on this list that we missed out on. And as always, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more content like this, then why don't you go ahead and Toss a banana peel at that subscribe button, and then ring that notification bell to be notified whenever we release new videos. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm Zian from Nintendo Life. Stay safe out there, and we will see you next time. Also, if you made it this far into the video and you didn't notice, we got a new camera. Yes! Woo!